The frost was still clinging to the fields that morning when a sharp knock echoed on the weathered wooden door of the old ranch house. Samuel Holt, a towering rancher known across the valley for his strength and solitude, had just stepped outside, the chill biting his bare chest as he prepared to tend the cattle. But when he opened that creaking door, he did not find a neighbor or a passing traveler. Instead, standing before him was a little girl, no more than 7 years old, her face streaked with dirt and tears, her hair tangled like wild grass, and her tattered orange dress clinging to her thin frame. Her voice trembled as she lifted her eyes toward him and whispered words that pierced his heart like a knife. "They beat my mama, she's dying." If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in stories that remind us of the good still left in this world, please take a moment right now to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to Kindness Corner so we can keep bringing you these heart-touching stories. For a moment, Samuel couldn't breathe. The words hung in the cold morning air, heavier than the frost around them. He looked down at the child's small boots, worn to the sole, her legs trembling from cold and fear. Behind her, the endless pine forest stretched like a dark wall, hiding secrets no child should ever have to know. Samuel had lived a hard life himself, one of loss and loneliness. But nothing could have prepared him for the raw desperation in that little girl's eyes. He bent down, his voice softer than the mountain winds, and asked her where her mama was. Without a word, she pointed back toward the woods, where the trees seemed to shiver in silence. Leaving his morning chores forgotten, Samuel grabbed his coat, threw it around the girl's shoulders, and followed her small footsteps through the frost. The ground was hard beneath his boots, and every breath clouded in the air as they moved deeper into the forest. The girl, whose name he later learned was Alara, walked with urgency despite her shaking legs. She said nothing more, only turned back every few moments to make sure he was following. It was not long before they came to a small clearing where a broken-down shack stood, leaning as though it might collapse at any moment. The door was hanging from one hinge, and inside, a weak sound of coughing could be heard. There, lying on a pile of old rags, was Alara's mother, Mara. Her face was swollen and bruised, her lips cracked, and her breath came shallow and weak. Samuel knelt beside her, his large hand hovering uncertainly over her frail frame. Mara tried to speak, but her voice broke into a whisper. From the bruises and the way she flinched even at his gentle touch, Samuel realized at once what had happened. Someone had beaten her savagely and left her to die. The sight brought back painful memories for Samuel. Years ago, his own sister had suffered at the hands of a cruel man, and though Samuel had tried to protect her, he had been too late. She had passed away, leaving him with a burden of guilt he carried in silence ever since. And now, standing over Mara, he felt that same fury and sorrow surge through him. But unlike before, this time he would not fail. He lifted Mara in his strong arms as though she weighed no more than a child and carried her back to his cabin, with Alara trailing close behind. Once inside, he laid Mara gently on his own bed, lit the fireplace until the cabin glowed with warmth, and prepared water and cloth to clean her wounds. He wasn't a doctor, but years of ranch life had taught him how to tend to injuries. Alara clung to her mother's side, her small hands never leaving Mara's. As Samuel worked tirelessly, he asked who had done this. Alara finally spoke, her voice breaking. It was the men her mother had once trusted, the men who promised to take care of them after Alara's father had died in an accident. Instead, he had turned cruel, beating Mara whenever his anger rose, until last night when his rage nearly killed her. Then, as though she were no more than trash, he left her bleeding in the shack. The fury in Samuel's chest burned like wildfire. But he knew rage alone would not help Mara. For 3 long days and nights, he cared for her. He made broth from his own stores, he sent word secretly to the town's doctor, and he worked the ranch alone while still returning every few hours to check on her. Mara was weak, but slowly her bruises began to heal, her breathing steadied, and her spirit, though fragile, flickered with life again. During those days, Samuel came to know little Alara more closely. She was quiet at first, but her eyes softened whenever she watched Samuel feed her mother or when he let her ride one of his horses around the ranch yard. She told him about the nights she had hidden under the broken floorboards to escape the man's fury, about how she dreamed of a safe place where her mother could smile again. Each word cut Samuel deeper, yet it also strengthened his resolve. When Mara was strong enough to sit up, Samuel finally made his decision. He rode into town, his broad figure casting a shadow over the saloon where the cruel man sat, boasting with his friends. Samuel walked straight to him, his voice calm but firm, and told him that Mara and Alara would never suffer under him again. The men laughed at first, mocking the rancher's solitary life. But Samuel's eyes burned with a fire that silenced the entire room. With the sheriff present, Samuel laid bare the evidence of the man's cruelty, the bruises, the witnesses, the doctor's word. This time, there would be no escape. The law took the men into custody, and for once justice was on the side of the innocent. When Samuel returned to the ranch, he found Mara sitting outside in the sunlight, Alara nestled against her side. Mara's eyes filled with tears when she saw him, not just from gratitude but from something deeper, a sense of safety she hadn't known in years. For Samuel, the moment was more than victory. It was healing. In saving Mara and Alara, he had also found a way to mend the old wound in his own heart. He had been given a second chance to do what he could not do for his sister, and he had seized it. Weeks passed, and the ranch that had once echoed only with the sound of Samuel's cattle now rang with laughter. Alara chased the chickens in the yard, her once ragged dress replaced with warm clothes Samuel had bought from town. Mara helped with small chores when her strength returned, her gentle presence bringing warmth into the lonely cabin. And Samuel, who had long lived in silence, found himself smiling more than he had in years. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, comment, and share this video, and subscribe to Kindness Corner to keep these powerful stories alive. Together, we can remind the world of the strength of compassion. And before we end, I'd love to know, what would you have done if that little girl had knocked on your door? Comment below and share your thoughts.